into your hands as we gather here today. We pray for your mercy, we pray for your grace, we pray for your strength to be upon us all today in the name of Jesus. Whatever we're going to discuss here today, it will be fruitful, it will yield fruit in the lives of each and every Scalonians in the name of Jesus. Lord God of heaven, give you all the praise, all the glory, all the honor and adoration. For in Jesus' mighty name we've prayed.
Thank you very much, Mr. Babalami. I'd like to call on Aisha Binta to lead us in the Muslim prayer. I'd like to call on Aisha.
Hello, good evening, everyone. Assalamu alaikum. It will be proper if we all recite Al-Fatiha by ourselves. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الله لا إله إلا هو الحي القيوم لا تأخذه سنة ولا نوم له ما في السماوات وما في الأرض من ذا الذي يشفع عنده إلا بإذنه يعلم ما بين يديه وما خلفه ولا يغدون بشيء من علمه إلا بما شاء وسع كرسي السماوات والأرض ولا يكتمه إلا هو العلي العظيم. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Aisha. You are as shy as I am, but I now mostly the courage, the boldness. What do they call it? The tenacity, the audacity. I am now bold enough to speak in front of you. So we're going to get to the next agenda, to the next business on our agenda, which is the declaration of purpose. We're going to get someone who's going to tell us why we are here. I said earlier on, we are going to get to the business of our business here today. We are going to call on our national coordinator-elect, Harry Henry Kago, to tell us why we are here. Mr. Harry Henry Kago, please. Put your hands together for our newly elected national coordinator.
Good evening all. Good evening all. You're all welcome here. Children's Generation is a group of young professionals who are making the difference in Sierra Leone through technology, sound leadership. We offer digital training for young people, build network, and provide opportunity. We have been advocating on digital rights issue over the course of this year. In May, prior to the Universal Periodic Review, we held a seminar where we invited guests that discussed about digital rights issues, and these issues were their recommendation when Sierra Leone was reviewed in May 2021. Furthermore, yesterday, the President ascended his signature on an important piece of digital legislation, the Cybersecurity and Crime Law 2021. Even though there are growing concerns from critics that this law will offer government an unchecked power to clamp down on opposition activists, journalists, and rights advocates, whilst it will stifle freedom of expression in the digital space, contrary to what is enshrined in our constitution. In an era where data is very valuable, individual rights to protect their data and privacy is key. Therefore, that's why Children's Generation has thought it fit to bring forward bright minds to discuss on this issue. Tons of sensitive data are collected regularly in hospitals, banks, telecom, and most importantly by government institutions like for Sierra Leone, such as NIA, NEC, NATCO, without a data protection law, which means there is no regulation on how data are being managed, stored, used, or disclosed. In compliance with the international law, the protection of data in the personal registration file and databases which could be kept with this authority against accidental unauthorized destruction, authorized access, and disclosure. This triggers the imperative need for a data protection law in Sierra Leone to assure protection of personal data of individuals and enhance data privacy and security whilst regulating institutions in collection, process, storage, transfer, and disclosure of data. A law that will set out the rights and obligation of individuals giving data to these institutions and to those collecting, processing, and using this data. To add a voice to the clarion call for data protection law in Sierra Leone and to guarantee fundamental freedom of right in the digital space, we are hereby present here to discuss on the topic data security and cyber attack. Why Sierra Leone needs an urgent data privacy and protection law. Why we call on stakeholders to speed up the groundbreaking legislation. You are assured of a smooth, engaging, and interesting discourse. Make yourself comfortable and also remember this is an opportunity to network, so don't let it slide.
Together for our national coordinator elect. I want you to put your hands together. Put your hands together once more for our national coordinator elect. Okay, at this juncture, I would like to ask you to fill up the spaces, to come closer. Let us cluster a little bit together. If you're at the extreme end over there, please come to this other end. We'd like you to come to this other end. If you're at the extreme end, at the penultimate row, please come to this other end. I think that's my, okay, that's not my seat. You're welcome, you're welcome, you're welcome. Have a seat, sir. I said earlier on, there are no designated seats here except for the panelists. So we are going to getting to the next item on our agenda, which is a small introduction, a talk about small media, the UPL, and why we're here. Is Hannah Makeni here? Catherine Annites? Is Catherine
Yes,
here?
I'm here. Can everyone hear me all right?
Sure, we can.
Perfect. Yes, super. Thank you so much for that introduction. And it's really an honor to be here with you all, calling in from London, and an honor for us to be supporting this event, following Sierra Leone's and Chosen Generation's successes at the UPR. So to everyone in the audience and to everyone tuning in, thank you so much for welcoming me today. My name is Hannah Macklin. I'm an advocacy manager at Small Media Foundation. Small Media is a civil society organization based in London that's working to support the free flow of information in politically closed societies. We're a design-driven civil society organization that first started our work supporting activists and journalists working on Iran. And now we have expanded to conduct our work globally. And in this case, through the Uproar program, we are supporting civil society organizations across Africa and the Middle East. And this means supporting a network of organizations such as Chosen Generation in order to amplify the importance of digital rights. And why we've come together today is to really celebrate and therefore create momentum to the successes that Sierra Leone had in its recent Universal Periodic Review through the hard work of Chosen Generation and other civil society actors, lawyers, journalists within Sierra Leone and the wider region. We had an incredibly successful session. Sierra Leone received specifically recommendations on digital rights, and in reference to today's agenda and some of the topics discussed, Sierra Leone did receive a recommendation on creating a cybersecurity act. And this is really, really momentous because this shows a new chapter for Sierra Leone and as well as digital rights across Africa. And it shows how digital rights are now being put upon the agenda nationally within Sierra Leone. So that, that's incredibly exciting, and it's a real opportunity for the folks in here with us today to really influence the future of human rights online and freedom of expression within Sierra Leone. So just a bit of background on why small media has supported today's discussions. Originally, when the project was founded in 2018, we saw a real lack of engagement on digital rights at the Universal Periodic Review, and we saw a real lack of engagement overall on human rights online, and we saw a real opportunity to connect civil society organizations across our target countries with UN delegates, and started to create that dialogue between the UN and local civil society to therefore really take advantage of the opportunity to have that dialogue turn into recommendations. And these recommendations turn into, as we've seen today, potential very influential national legislative changes. So a real core objective of Uproar is our grassroots approach. We are supporting organizations within every country that we're working in, and we're at a total of 33 countries across sub-Saharan Africa, Africa in general, and the MENA region. So it's really incredibly exciting for us to be supporting that. Really exciting work being conducted. And overall, we want to emphasize that this work is incredibly important in the context of what we've seen happen not only in Sierra Leone, but globally over the past year and a half. So we're generally seeing a shrinking space online with things like internet shutdowns and surveillance, as well as other nefarious acts related to trying to quell civil unrest, as well as control information online. This can include misinformation, disinformation, and any other forms of surveillance. At the same time, over the last couple of years, what we've also seen in Sierra Leone is the proliferation of internet access, and really where we've seen many of our various work systems, such as hospitals and our various jobs, completely online. So therefore, whilst we see this shrinking space online, we're also seeing the importance of the internet globally, and of course, particularly in Sierra Leone and the regions around which we were supporting, and therefore we really see the UPR as one of the few remaining channels of communication to really push through the importance of digital rights in order to influence what the internet is going to look like, and in this case in Sierra Leone. And so what the Uproar program has done, and therefore the Small Media Initiative is doing, is really seeing the need for more grassroots voices at the UPR and at the UN in general. And what's been clear to us is that this has been, incredible effort amongst civil society organizations in Sierra Leone, and that's why we have seen these successes as we've had with the UPR. And I think today's seminar is really, reflective of those successes. Like I said, looking at the Cybercrime and Security Act and how that's going to be relevant in what the future of the internet and human rights online looks like in Sierra Leone, the regulatory gap, surveillance, and looking at data privacy versus public good. And overall, it's been an honor to support really key discussions as we're seeing today. And we know that with the previous successes we have seen at the UPR, we know that this will be the stepping stone towards continuing to influence legislation and overall access and open access to internet in Sierra Leone in the future. So thank you so much to Chosen Generation and partners for organizing today's discussion. It's been a pleasure, and do let me know if I can answer any questions related to UPR and our work at Small Media. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Hannah Mackley. Thank you so much. Let us put our hands together for Hannah Mackley. Ladies and gentlemen, it has been quite a wonderful talk. We appreciate you. We now understand our purpose here. We are all here now, fully overwhelmed, I must say. We are trying to chew what you said, and we're trying to understand what Small Media is all about and the work you've been doing. We want to thank you. I don't know if any member of guests want to ask a question about Small Media. You want to say you want to talk about Small Media. Is there something you wish to know about Small Media? Because Hannah is right here, ready to answer any question you want to ask. I want to believe there are no questions for now. Thank you very much, Hannah. It's a pleasure.
Thank you so much.
All right.
Thank you so much, and I'm looking forward to the rest of the discussions for the remaining part of the event.
Thank you very much. So we're going to get to the next item on our agenda. We're going to get to the business of our business here today. At this time, we would like to proceed to the panel discussion. We would like to get the moderator, who is the outgoing national coordinator of Chosen Generation, to introduce the members of the panel. Mr. Joel Abdullahi Kalor. Please welcome him to the hands together for Mr. Joel Abdullahi Kalor.
Good evening. Are you excited? Well, you should be, because I am, and I'm really looking forward to very electrifying, powerful engagement here tonight. You know, because the topic and the nature of the conversation has bearing all of us, whether we would like to admit it, whether we recognize it or not. Data privacy, data security is critical in today's technological age. So without wasting time, I'd like to introduce our panelists for today's very, very important conversation. I'll start in no particular order at all. The first person I'm about to introduce is a household name in Sierra Leone. He made a name for himself as a fearless and articulate advocate of the people. Mr. Thomas Moore Conte is the first son in a family of 4 boys. He was born in the mid-80s in a small but beautiful town known as Vendembo in the northern part of Sierra Leone, that's Bombali District. He holds a BA in Linguistics and Political Science from Furabe College, University of Sierra Leone. He actually graduated in 2010. And has added a degree in law and LLB honors, which was obtained in 2014 from the same institution. A young man with huge potential, he has occupied several leadership positions, including but not limited to Secretary General of Western Area Baptist Youth Association in 2006, President of Bible Hall, FBC in 2008, Chief Electoral Commissioner, FBC in 2009, spokesperson for National Union of Sierra Leone Students In 2012, spokesperson for the Consortium for Good Governance, Human Rights, Rule of Law and Democracy in 2019, and spokesperson, Civil Society Working Group on Epidemics and Natural Disaster. Just a number of spokespersons positions he has held will give you an insight into the selfless servant that Mr. Mokonte has transformed himself into. He's passionate about Sierra Leone, about the issues that affect the lives of every Sierra Leonean. He currently leads the Citizens Advocacy Network, which is indisputably one of the most widely respected civil society organizations in Sierra Leone. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me as I welcome Mr. Thomas Mokonte to the panel. I thought he really deserved better. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, it's my singular honor to now introduce someone whose professionalism, has been very inspiring in this couple of days that, we have interacted. Professor Umar Ba came in highly recommended as someone who could greatly enrich this conversation. And when we reached out to him, he had no trouble at all giving consent, and not just stopping at that, but also providing technical support and pieces of advice from time to time. Professor Umar Ba is founder and CEO of DataWise Sierra Leone. DataWise is a database company. It's a data brokerage company that collects, aggregates, validates, evaluates, and analyzes comprehensive, accurate, and actionable data for government, businesses, and non-profit organizations. So that has been senior professor of communication with over 20 years of local and international knowledge and experience in media and social science research methods, with a focus on open data, open source management for entrepreneurship, civic education, and sustainable development. His portfolio includes 18 years of research, teaching, and service at both undergraduate and graduate levels. He supervised thesis, designed and evaluated courses and curriculums, served as coordinator of graduate level teaching and administrative programs, and designed, launched, and managed an innovative program for global collaboration on the applications of information and data for entrepreneurship, civic engagement, and sustainable development. He has published in various peer-reviewed journals and made presentations at several universities and academic and professional conferences. In recognition of his productivity and accomplishments, Professor Ba is a recipient of several prestigious awards, including the U.S. Fulbright Scholars Award, the Dean's Award for Excellence in Research and Scholarship, and the Congressional Achievement Award by the United States House of Representatives. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me as we welcome this distinguished son of the soil, Professor Umar Ba. Finally, ladies and gentlemen, I have the distinct honor to introduce to you one of Sierra Leone's most powerful and influential female leaders, Dr. Sylvia Olayinka Walmina Orishola Blyden, OOR. Is a Sierra Leonean medical doctor, a journalist, and socio-political commentator. A human rights activist, owner of the country's most widely read and fastest-selling newspaper, of course, the awareness times. She's a philanthropist par excellence, and in February 2013, she became the first woman ever appointed to Sierra Leone State House with cabinet rank as Special Executive Assistant to Sierra Leone's former President, Ernest Bai Koroma. Over the years, Dr. Blyden has been consistent, fearless, and courageous in expressing positions on Sierra Leone, which has won her many accolades, and she is easily one of Sierra Leone's most admired women currently. One simply cannot speak of Sierra Leone's leading strong women with tremendous influence among the ordinary citizens of Sierra Leone without listing Dr. Sylvia Blyden. As the then only female university student president, Dr. Sylvia Blyden was invited by the United Nations to represent Sierra Leone's female youth in Beijing. This speaks to how, even as a student, Dr. Blyden, had exemplified her leadership qualities. But she's here tonight because Dr. Blyden is one of the earliest pioneers of ICT in Sierra Leone. Many of us, who, I know the room is full of young people, but those who, we are quite mature in the early 2000s, will tell you Dr. Blyden founded or established one of the very first internet cafes in Sierra Leone, where she trained a lot of young people in the use of ICT, and they've been just introducing Sierra Leoneans to the digital age. She is an accomplished politician, a very experienced journalist, and someone who is never hesitant to fully express her views. And that's why we are very excited to have her on the panel today. Ladies and gentlemen, without much ado, please join me as I welcome Dr. Sylvia Blyden. Thank you very much, distinguished lady and gentlemen. We are really elated to have you here. Thank you very much for leaving your very, very tight schedules to be with these outstanding young leaders here tonight to discuss what is a very important subject. Data privacy, data security, data protection, and germane in the digital age. Very briefly, I'll just maybe allow our panelists to say a word or two. We start with small content.
Thank you very much. Let me use this opportunity to thank the leadership of choosing generation. I'm giving a CGG position. And all of us here, I feel highly elated to be on this platform to discuss such a very sensitive issue at this point in our country's history. About 7 months ago, I received a call for my brother, Joel, who by then was the national coordinator of Choosing Generation, and asked me whether I'm interested in partnering to present a paper at the UN Assembly that will have to do with digital rights, privacy, and what have you. At the time, I thought it over. I said, okay, let me think about it. Because as a civil rights activist, I never had much knowledge, not to talk of interest in pushing issues of digital rights, data protection, and what have you. Well, after reading, I went to Google and read something around digital rights, data protection, whatever. And then I called him back and said, brother, let's do this. Let's send the paper. And collaboratively, Citizens Advocacy Network, Choosing Generation, Seattle Reporters Union, and another institution, Charlie, we did a paper which we sent with recommendations, in which we were, of course, recognized by the UN Assembly at the time. It is, of course, indicated in their report that they made. So some months after that, I received a call from somebody in Senegal, whom I've never met, I've never known. And he said, is this Thomas Mokonta? I said, yes. We have a project that we want to roll out on data protection. It's a project that is going down in 5 countries in West Africa. And Sierra Leone should be part of it. We want your organization to move on advocacy for data protection law to be implemented in Sierra Leone as espoused in the Makeni Convention. And I said, that is good. We have, at least I have got some fair knowledge about data protection. We have presented the paper to the UN on data protection, so I can do something around that. So we did the proposal, we sent it, and then we had talks. The project materialized. We are currently rolling it out. We have had series of engagements, of course, with the government, stakeholders, and whatever. So I'm very much happy to be here today to discuss issues around data protection. That is why I'm here. Not a data protection expert, I must say, but I'm also in the learning process. I'm very much interested in it.
Yes, I mean, we have a diverse panel with skills, experiences, and knowledge, different backgrounds, because data protection issues are cross-cutting. As you will get to know us when the panel starts proper, the issues affect all of us. So that's why you're here, Mr. Thomas Mokonta. Professor, anything for?
Thank you very much for giving me this cherished opportunity really to interface with you. You all are the faces of not only our country, but our continent. This is inspiring. These fresh, young, and eager faces that are hungry to share with and from one another inspires me. I just want to say perhaps a couple of words here, which is a lot of us have heard of the phrase, the fourth industrial revolution. The fourth industrial revolution. It's a revolution. It's not just of technology, it's of smart technology, where a man or woman becomes machine and machine becomes man. And where the mind meld between the two is of critical importance to the way we think and learn and interact and advocate and empower ourselves across disciplines and cultures and endeavors. So you guys are the cutting edge of thinking, and this panel discussion and its advocacy for data rights and protection comes at the most prescient time, an opportune moment. And I can't wait for us to mind meld here and over there.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor. Let's hear from Doc.
Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator. Good afternoon, everyone. I believe the experts have spoken. I will just add a little bit to it. Data protection is critical. It's an essence of human rights. Your privacy, whether it is the privacy of a company, or the privacy of an individual, or the privacy of an organization, your right to privacy is very, very important. In Sierra Leone, a lot of people don't know that there is an act called the National, let me get the exact name. The National Security and Central Intelligence Act of 2002. This was an act that was passed by the late former president, Dr. Alhaji Ahmad Tijan Kabah. And this is an act that gives a lot of powers to the state to invade the citizens' privacy, to invade your data, your phones, your communications, to eavesdrop, to listen to what you're saying, to plant gadgets in your bedroom, to plant gadgets in your bathroom. This act gives a lot of powers to the state to do that. However, the late former president of blessed memory and the parliament at that time ensured that they put in safeguards into that act, so that even if the state has the right to go and plant a secret camera in your bedroom or in your bathroom, or even if the state has the right to start eavesdropping on what you're saying on the phone, the state, first of all, has to go through a series of steps before they can do that. And one such step is to get someone of a high court judge, seated as a high court judge, to be convinced that the security of the state lies on them secretly monitoring you, secretly listening to you, and that judge has to be convinced. And if the judge is convinced, then he gives the go-ahead, and the state can now monitor you. Now, I have taken my time to explain all of this, because what has been happening in Sierra Leone is that despite the existence of this law, and despite these safeguards, the state has been invading our privacy without going through the correct procedure. I myself am a victim of that. State seizing my SIM cards, monitoring me, recording me, without getting an order from a high court judge. Now it's going to get worse. We now have something called the name has changed, but I think it's called the Cyber Security and Crime Act.
Yes.
So even without that act, these people were not regarding the national security and central intelligence.
Thank you very much, Doug, for setting the tone.
Thank you.
You already know, this promises to be a very exciting conversation. Doug mentioned the NASIA Act, the National Security and Central Intelligence Act. In Section 22, subsection 1 of that mandates or gives or empowers the Director General of the ONS, for instance, through the High Court judge, to say we want to monitor certain person X, Y, Z because of so and so. And they can monitor, they can intercept your communication for up to 60 days, according to that. Unfortunately, not many Sierra Leoneans are even aware of such laws, but they exist, and like Doc mentioned, they are utilized. But sadly, the sad part in all of that, that's why conversations like this are critical, is that in the absence of a law that protects citizens' data, in the absence of such a law, provisions like this could be arbitrarily misused, and just used to target politicians, activists like Thomas More Conte, and just maybe everyday online users of the internet, like yourself and my person. That's why we are having the conversation. I'll start with Prof. Sierra Leone recently passed, yesterday we saw the president signing into law the Cyber Security and Cybercrime Act. So it's now a law enforceable in all its forms, being an act to provide for the prevention of the abusive use of computer systems, to provide for the timely and effective collection of electronic evidence for the purpose of investigation and prosecution of cybercrime, to provide for the protection of critical national information infrastructure, to provide for the facilitation of international cooperation in dealing with cybercrime matters, and to provide for other related matters. Now, Prof, how relevant do you think this act is within the Sierra Leonean context?
Thank you. Is a cybercrime law important? Absolutely, unequivocally, yes. I talked earlier on about the fourth industrial revolution, okay? About how everything is not only online and how borders no longer exist. People could be from thousands of miles away, faceless, doing whatever they want to do. So as the state gets more and more online, yes, it is important to have an effective, I underline effective, cybercrimes protection. So at face value, it is important that we do have a Cybercrimes Act. I suppose a better question would be, to what extent does the existing Cybercrime Act line up with the needs of protection?
Oh, we want to establish first and foremost, within the context of as I have mentioned, we want to protect our critical national infrastructure, promote cooperation, international cooperation in fighting cybercrime and all of that. Dealing with cyber attacks. The question is that relevant? Do you think cyber attacks are a real threat in Sierra Leone?
Oh yes, it is. Now, let's not confuse cyber attacks with online internet attacks. You can have cyber attack without being online. So, and in fact, it is, I know perhaps we could have that discussion further, but it is absolutely reasonable to assume that cyber attacks are ongoing. The more we have massive databases like the NCRA, which is going to be, when it's completed, overarching, comprehensive, and everything, highly intrusive, okay? It is reasonable to assume that more and more people, not only within here, but abroad, would be interested in that for good, bad, and nefarious reasons. So yes, I mean, the short answer to that is, yes, it is important for that.
Okay. Now, Dr. Bliney, you've been working in the ICT space for decades. Harry here, newly elected national coordinator, was one of those you trained during the early use of computers and the internet. From your experience working in this domain, have there been incidences of cyber attacks in Sierra Leone? Are you aware of such happenings in Sierra Leone?
I think the first thing we would have to do is define what you mean by cyber attacks, because the word cyber is a bit word-based. But if I get it correctly, I think you're saying where somebody's privacy is breached from an external source. Is that what you're asking?
I mean, just even critical national infrastructure, such as our health system, maybe external attacks. Maybe you have North Korea, for instance, always targeting the US. You have cyber attacks from Russia targeting network infrastructures in the US, for example. Have there been similar happenings in Sierra Leone? We really want to establish whether we have that threat, of an external cyber attack in Sierra Leone.
Definitely, all nations around the world have the threat. And just like Professor has just said, the NCRA is a gold mine of information that any external entity, for maybe marketing purposes, they want to sell shoes to Sierra Leone, but they need to know how many young people are in Sierra Leone, how many old people are in Sierra Leone, and how many of these young people would want the Nike type of design, how many would, and hacking into the NCRA database, for example, would give them a lot of data. So the threat is there. Now, I think what we want to know is it a benign threat, like this one where they would just want to get data, they want to know how many men are in Sierra Leone, how many women, how many young people? Would be a benign way of somebody who wants to do for marketing. And then there's the malignant threat, where you have someone who is deliberately emptying the database to either maybe change data for nefarious purposes or destroy the data. And if there's no backup, that's it. I think the nearest...
Something like with the NCRA data, for example, that will have grave implications for our elections because...
Well, I was just coming to that. You would remember during the 2018 elections, on the day of the elections in the evening, we had this police rushing to Godrich and saying that there has been compromise of the NEC database through a cyber Ghanaian experts who came in. So the threat is there. And you and I, those of us who are familiar with what can happen, somebody can be an Israeli teenager in Israel and hack into a government database in America. So in Sierra Leone, the threat can also happen, like it allegedly happened in 2018 elections. There are people who are convinced that there was changing via a cyber attack of some of the data in the NEC elections database. So it is there, it is real, and it will always be real for any nation. So to answer to your question, definitely the threat is here. Has it happened before? There's no actual evidence of that. I think the nearest we have had is websites have been hacked. They've hacked a lot of government websites. Oh yes, it happens all. Are you not aware of government websites where you log in one day and you see a Chinese data is there now? In fact, we had an interesting attack one time. I will not call the government entity's name. This was under the last regime, where the website was hacked, and then this person put a skull and bones and put a message, yes, that we've taken over your website. So I think that's the nearest that you would call a cyber attack, taking over websites of government entities.
Interesting. This starts with small content. To what extent do you believe the recently passed cyber law could address some of these threats of cyber attacks? Do you think the law in its correct form could address that? Because it's not just about the law, you have the laws, enforcement, and just capacity issues. Do you think this law is able to address some of the threats that the law has mentioned?
Yeah, well, I want to join us with Doc and Professor to say that there is need for a cybersecurity law in our society. Cyberspace, I always say, is a different space, it's a different world from the real world we live in. And a lot of things go on in the cyberspace that will require regulation. And it's a laudable venture for our government to have actually had the cybersecurity law passed in our parliament. The question of whether it will actually address all the challenges that will come with the cyberspace is difficult to say, because as you have had, even as there are laws being established by different states to address cybercrime and cybersecurity issue, you need to know that the people who indulge in the practice of cybercrime are also revolutionizing their acts. Their approach, as systems and processes are being established to actually secure the cyberspace, the proclivity does exist for people who are involved in cybersecurity, cyber crimes, to actually upgrade their act. So it will be very much difficult for me to say that it will address the challenges. But I believe it's a step in the right direction if it is actually implemented if it is implemented according to what people aspire for as a nation. I believe it's accepted by the nation.
I'm asking this question because we have several fine laws in our books. In 2013, South passed the right to access information. How many Sierra Leoneans such a law? The other day I was speaking to a guy at RAIC. I just wanted to have data on compliance with the law. He told me, the government agencies, they don't even comply, they don't get data because the law asks RAIC for the even keep data, ask institutions. If I make a request for data or information, therefore keep record with annually RAIC for so for able to see which institutions have been very compliant and which ones haven't. So we have laws that don't work basically. Would you like to be? Do you think this particular law?
Well, I think the purpose of RAIC, Right to Access Information Act of 2013, our purpose is giving citizens access, okay, of what is called non-exempt categories of data in the hands of government. So I think that is specific and it's very important. But I want to come a little bit back to this question about the applicability and appropriateness and relevance of this current Cyber Crimes and Security Act. Cybercrime, maybe. Cybersecurity, no. That's because I'm not a lawyer, okay? But so I don't want to misrepresent myself as such. But the reading of the tenor and tone of the act, by and large, seeks to empower governments against the activities of citizens. I'm not saying necessarily that in and of itself is bad. Okay, it happens all over. That's why I preface my own discussion with saying, yes, it is important. So in that extent, it's giving law enforcement the appropriate tools and rights and authorities and so on and so forth to go after what I would call computer-mediated crimes, okay? But when we deal with cybersecurity, we're talking ultimately about these huge networks, for example, cyber activities. Now we're not dealing about the activities of citizens that government want to criminalize or criminal acts that government wants to prosecute. We're now dealing with issues of folk all over the world who are hacking into computer business and so on and so forth. And then at that point, yes, we might talk about national critical information infrastructures, NCIIs, but I'm not sure the relevance of that to that issue, nor am I saying that necessarily that's what the purpose is, because it's broad enough to be a catch-all that asserts right there at the top that it is being an act to prosecute computer related abuse and so on and so forth. So I think the law in that sense is not disingenuous, actually. So I think I'll pause there and I'll have other issues to talk about later.
You made a very interesting distinction between the law being perhaps able to address cyber crimes issues, but will not be as effective in addressing cyber security issues. I would bring in Doug. In fact, in the early iterations of the formulation of that law, one of the feedback from citizens and other stakeholders was to have the name changed. Because initially the cyber crime law, these guys, why did you focus on crime? I mean, why are they targeting citizens? Doc, to what extent do you agree with people who believe that the real intention of this law is to target citizens, journalists like yourselves, activists, and other, to stifle freedom of expression online? To what extent? There was this Adebayo and people like that. The law is actually intended to just get a hold on yes, clamp down on people like that. like that, and just be freedom of expression had.
There are already many laws, and I said this recently. I had an interview on television, and somebody asked me this question in a different way about the criminal libel laws, that now the criminal libel laws are gone, so people are now free. And I said, if you have a regime that wants to go after anybody, as we say in our local Creole parlance, government acts for faith. If they want to go after you, there are already enough laws in place to be abused. They don't need to create any more new laws to abuse them. There are enough laws already in place that can be abused. I gave the example of the gentleman in Bo who made a video where he was very critical of the current president, and he was arrested on incitement. But then they had just had this positive, glowing report about removing the criminal libel laws, and how do you take someone now and arrest the person for against freedom of speech with all the rave reviews you're getting? So what do? They say, go to his house and search the entire house. Any item in the house that doesn't have a receipt. These were the instructions given to the police. Any item in the house that does not have a receipt, bring the item, it is stolen goods. Yes. So they went to the house, got all the items, television, motorbike, everything. And this man, interestingly, had, 1 second, let me just. I am right on the high table. I will not be able to talk now, okay? I had asked somebody for some data from the government and possible just. So they went and, fortunately for this young man, he had a receipt for every single item in the house, including his TV. So what did they do? They go to the next stage. And they now say they found Panadol in his house. So they charge him for possessing Panadol in his house. And he went to jail for 8 months for Panadol in his house. So they don't need to create new laws. So to answer your question, I don't think that's the motive. There is a need for us to monitor cyberspace. Some of us are victims of it. It's just because we are computer savvy ourselves, we are media and public relations savvy ourselves. I was subjected to this same name you just called. He was broadcasting every single day that I am RUF rebel. If I wasn't savvy, I would not be able to handle. So there has to be a law in place to protect somebody like me. So I am for the law. It's a good law. There are very good aspects to it. And I don't think we should do scaremongering. Sure. That this is just coming for the opposition. When they want the opposition, they will find the opposition. It's not a stolen goods na Panadol.
Interesting, at Choosing Generation, ahead of the UPR, part of our advocacy really was for the passing of that law, which we are happy has now been signed into law, and of course, for a data protection law as well. Well, Sierra Leone lacks comprehensive regulation on data protection and data privacy. Apart from, I think it's section 22 of our constitution, which guarantees the right to privacy. There are no other known laws, basically, that protect my rights. The data that NCRA collects, the data that NEPS collect. And many of us may not know, but SIM card registration is mandatory in Salon right now. NATCO, to the various telcos are mandated to collect most times personal identifying information of citizens. They collect your name, sometimes even collect biometric. In fact, according to the telecoms regulations, they should be collecting some biometric information or data of citizens. Imagine all of this is happening without a data protection law. My question really about this: why does there seem to be some delay or hesitancy in passing a data protection law? In other words, why in many countries a cybersecurity law and a data protection law are passed simultaneously? Why was more effort paid to passing a cybersecurity law, and we have not seen similar efforts in having a data protection law?
Well, I don't know. I'm not part of the government, so I don't. But it is very important. I suppose perhaps we're prefacing that. I suppose the inference of that question, so to speak, the extension of it would be given its centrality to individual and group privacy and security. And yes, you're right. For emerging countries, I mean, long existing countries, they have a history that goes centuries dealing with, back and forth issues dealing with citizens, advocates, the same thing like you great minds like you have been doing here for ages. It is very important, this statement cannot be overemphasized, that a comprehensive data protection laws and data privacy rights, interrelated but not interchangeable, okay? It is critically important that those two be passed. And I'll leave it to the brains, the legal luminaries, to decide whether it should be done separately. I think it should, or whether it should be one omnibus comprehensive thing that passes. But I'll pause here for now. It is very important.
I mean, you've been working quite recently on data protection advocacy.
Yeah.
What's causing it? You probably have insight.
Well, I'm not a government official, I must say. I cannot say for sure. But I will tell you that plans are on the way for a data protection law. The project that we are currently rolling out has given us the opportunity to interface with government institutions and authorities. Of course, we have the Deputy Minister of Information here, whom we have had talks with, and there is currently a serious strategy in place to have a data protection legislation, and they have assured us that it will be passed into law before this year expires. But I will tell you that it is true that most states are reluctant to pass data protection law and cybersecurity law simultaneously, even passing the data protection law before a cybersecurity law. Even when we have legislations that have actually clearly spelled out the need for cybersecurity law and data protection law to be established. And there is always the risk for people to miss or to actually misunderstand cybersecurity for data protection. A lot of people, even learned people, have had lawyers say, I don't get all the cybersecurity, we talk about data protection. People don't call me, what do you about this data protection? Yes, there is cybersecurity already. But there is a fine line of distinction between cybersecurity law and data protection law. While cybersecurity deals with what happens within the cyberspace and the electronic world, data protection goes beyond that. You are talking about going to school, registering, having people come in here, register. Before I came in, I was asked to write my name, my phone number, my email address. That has nothing to do with cyber, but it has a lot to do with data.
Sure.
What is Choosing Generation doing with data that I have just given? What if Choosing Generation has been hired to gather data of people and sell them to terrorists?
Sure.
Or maybe somebody is looking out for people to attack or want to use your identity to commit a crime. So that is a clear difference between cybersecurity and data protection. But why is it that states or government are reluctant to have a data protection law. In most cases, it's not only in Sierra, most African states, because when you have a data protection law, it actually gives citizens, the ordinary man, the right to demand. While cybersecurity law gives the states the authority to demand from the people, data protection law gives the people the authority to demand from the states that you have to acknowledge my right. There was a time when I was arrested and taken to CID, and then they impounded my phone. Before leaving CID, somebody called me and told me that phone you don't take now, you have not used again. They don't go pass something inside we will make any side is good, no side which you talk, they hear you, anybody you communicate with, you message is all illegal. It happens. Why does that happen? It's because we do not have a legislation. If legislation be there, and I notice somebody they peep into my privacy, I can take action against such a person. So the states or politicians are most times reluctant to have data protection legislations because it gives them the scope and latitude to play their act without much consideration to legal ramifications.
Yeah. Maybe we could bring in talk. I mean, still in line with it. How does the data protection law really protect consumers or citizens? In what specific ways? We could just break it down so that our audience there could really understand the relevance of such a law.
I see we have quite a youthful audience, so let me try to find something that they can relate to. When you go on the internet these days, when you go browsing, I'm sure you would have noticed something that is now of late on almost all websites. A message pops up, and it says something like, we use cookies on this site. If you want to continue, know that we use cookies. Do you agree? And then you have to click accept. I'm sure you must have noticed that. So you're all young, you all use the internet. Now, basically, why they're doing this? It is because they find themselves in a location where the law says they should do that. And what is it that they are doing? They are warning you that when you've come onto this website, I have planted something in your computer. You see, we call them cookies. Many, many years ago, when we started pioneering the ICT sector in the world, we had nicknames for a lot of things, and that's where they came with this thing called cookies. This is like stealing something from a cookie jar. So they call them cookies, where they plant it. The minute you go to the website, when the website opens, something that is a software program, a small software program, is automatically planted into your laptop, or into your phone, or into your computer systems. And what that thing does, it is now a spy in your system. Everywhere you go, it reports back to its master. Every website you visit, it reports back to its master. So you would notice, and those of you who regularly use the internet, you would notice something. After you visit a certain website, when you now go on Facebook or on other websites, it now shows you specific adverts that are related to that website you first went to. And it will keep on showing you these adverts. You know why? Your computer is reporting the minute you log on to Facebook. The cookie in your computer is telling Facebook that this person recently went to so and so and so website. So this person would now like to have an advert that would interest them concerning so and so website. What they have done, they have invaded your privacy. So now, unfortunately, if let's say, for example, you go to a sex website, one of these pornographic websites, they report back that you've gone to this pornographic website. You don't want that to happen. You don't want people to know you went to certain websites. But because you have clicked accept on that website, that yes, take my cookies, let your cookie come into my computer, you've exposed yourself. What the website owner is doing is obeying the law in their own country, which says that if you take the data or you plant a cookie in somebody else's computer and you start collecting their data, everywhere they go, you collect what they do, you will be jailed. You'll be sent to jail. So they are protecting themselves from jail. That's why they're telling you. If you come on this website, we put in a cookie. If you want a cookie, continue. If you don't want a cookie, leave our website. So now, bringing it now to the salon sector. Imagine if we don't have such a law in existence in Sierra Leone. So the importance of creating the data protection law is basically to protect citizens, especially innocent citizens who would not know. I'm sure many of you never knew when you click that accept cookie that it means you're now open to being spied upon. So if we have a data protection law, then automatically we would also know that there's a jail term consequence. So to my mind, in answer to, if I understand the question well, to my mind it is essential, it is timely, and it is important for us to have the data protection laws passed as fast as possible. Why are people clapping? Is it because is it because I spoke about certain websites that you would not want to be?
Doc has quite simply, articulated the relevance of a data protection law. Like I mentioned earlier, we don't have such a law, but NCRA collect tons of citizens' data. NATCOM, through its telcos, collect volumes of data of citizens. How do these data collection efforts leave citizens vulnerable? How vulnerable are citizens of Sierra Leone in particular to data breaches, cyber attacks, and all of that? Now that institutions collect.
So what's the scale? On the scale of 1 to 1 million, I'll say 1,000,001. It's better perhaps to have a data protection law that has gaps than to not have any at all right now, which is the current situation. Data protection, as opposed to privacy, deals with the rules governing how government agencies and corporations, okay, you mentioned the telcos, Orange, Money, AfriMoney, and so on and so forth. Kudos to them. I think they're doing a wonderful job, but they're doing whatever they want to do with the data right now. And they're getting away with it because they're not.
Couples, there are these couple stories where, yes, somebody will say, I get you call log, who I call, these are breaches.
Yeah, and I think, see, here's the thing. Most of the time, I think, for example, Right to Access Information Commission, Right to Access Information Act that you mentioned earlier, a lot of people, civil servants doing a wonderful job within inordinate amount of constraints that wouldn't, get into here, wouldn't have the time to do so. But people are very territorial about government data. Like you said, walk to NRA and say you want to know how many people within certain demographic bracket have paid certain amount of taxes. They'll tell you it's a state secret, and it's not. Okay? And that's not because of any nefarious, that's because people think, but who are you from I can just give free data when you will see to me. Okay? And that's one. And that's kind of like the benign part of it, the benign threat, quote Sylvia. But I think what I'm trying to say is that what data protection laws do, effective ones, is to tell what we call data processors and data controllers. If you work in any MDA, okay, and you are in charge also, in other words, right down to anybody who, even the IT person who is uploading these NCRA data, okay, there's nothing that can stop that person to use a memory stick and walk away with it, okay? So data protection, among the plethora, okay, of protections that it will provide, is the one that tells everybody across MDAs policies and procedures, do's and don'ts and consequences of the don'ts of the data management from the time you collect that data to the time you legally dispose of them, underline legally. So it is really very, very important. Most of the time, I don't see anything nefarious here, okay? I am talking about things where, you know, nature abhors a vacuum, and the absence of any kind of clearly articulated policy and procedure, chaos. And by and large, we're dealing with what I, for want of a better expression, term ignorant chaos, not ignorance as is stupid. No, ignorance is the real literal definition of not knowing. And that's what data security, data protection laws do. It tells government for now, by and large, government still is the largest controller and processor of data, but pretty soon, Orange and the others, especially when they start what they call doing interoperability, okay, with NCRA, because they can't wait to get their hands on NCRA data, and they can. Governments do that all the time. There's nothing that will stop them. It's just that there should be rules, policies, and procedures as to under what context and how and so on and so forth they should provide access to those data. That is very, 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 very important. I'll stop here until the house and what's later.
Interesting. Let's have Doc weigh. Is it a government institution breaking some laws? You know, take the Constitution, for instance, which guarantees the right by collecting my data, my personal data, and things like that, without any law whatsoever that provides for redress in the case of a breach. Aren't they breaking some laws, or aren't they infringing on my rights to privacy as enshrined in a... Could I refuse, for instance, to have NCRA collect my data?
Yes, of course. I mean, it's not mandatory. It's the Constitution.
It's mandatory.
No, it's not.
The NCRA Act.
It's not.
NCRA are mandated by the Act.
No, NCRA will be mandated, but you as an individual, nobody can force you. If you don't want to be registered, you don't want to give your fingerprints, for example, because these are biometric data. If you don't want to give your fingerprints, for example, nobody will force you. The only thing is the loss of benefits. What if, for example, you're not able to open a bank account because you don't have an NCRA identity? So yeah, like in America, you have the social security number. Without the social security number, you cannot open a bank account. In England, you have the national insurance number. Without the national insurance number, you cannot open a bank account. So there will be benefits that you would lose out on. And in some of these Western countries, it is automatic. The minute you are born, you get a social security number. The minute you are born, you get an NI number. But it is not mandatory. However, the laws are crafted in such a manner that you would be bottlenecked into having to be registered, but it is not mandatory, but not by force. But okay, please. Again, it all boils down to interpretation. The mandate is on the NCRA, not on citizens. It's the NTRA that has the mandate. But again, I don't know how you are going to compel somebody to take their fingerprints, for example, if they don't want to give you their fingerprints. What are you going to do? What does the law say? You're going to put the person in jail if the person refuses to give their fingerprints. So it's a bit difficult to say it's mandatory. But to the issue, I don't want us to just limit it to just big government agencies. Thomas Malconte mentioned something when he was saying we all came in here, we all gave our phone numbers, we all gave our email addresses, and then he asked a question. What is chosen generation going to do with this data? Why do they want this data? What are they going to do with this data? And people would not want, after 2 weeks from today, you suddenly get an email or a text message on your phone marketing something to you, selling something to you, or calling you to beg you for money because whosoever is calling you got your data from chosen generations not handling it properly. So if chosen generation, for example, collects all this data from us, it is because I believe at the end of the program, maybe they want to send an email to say thank you. Thank you for being here, or send a text message to say thank you for coming, or have it in their database so that the next time they have a program like this, they can send you an invite to invite you to come. That would be why they would want that data. But if this data now gets misused by someone working at chosen generation, who now takes this data and gives it out to some marketer and says, oh, you were marketing for, let's say, for example, that I met some young, nice ladies a few days ago. They were marketing, very beautiful ladies, beautiful appearance, very, very convincing, marketing insurance policies by Africell or Orange, one of the two. And I was asking these ladies, and I met them and I'm asking them, how do you approach people to market this? Because like they have this policy, I think you pay like 1,000 leons a day, and if something happens to you, there's 5 million leons given as casanti to your relatives. It's like an insurance policy. So I'm asking them, how do you get the numbers of people to call? And they say, well, we should go around and ask people for them, their phone number. So now, if you meet someone like that, who wants telephone numbers of real people in existence, they would ask chosen generation, yeah, then people they will turn down on a program. Give me the telephone number, no, like call they all begin market this insurance policy. Now, if there's nothing, there's no deterrent, there's nothing there that makes it criminal for chosen generation to sell your data, they will do it. So the importance of it is don't just limit it to government. Even a small entity like this can also abuse other people's rights. So the whole essence of protecting data privacy is ensuring that when somebody has access to your data, whether it is at the governmental level, whether it is at the chosen generation level, whether it is a crime to use that person's data. I think that's the whole essence we have to focus on.
Data can be abused by just anyone, not necessarily government, private companies, civil society organizations, individuals, and without a law, right, that effectively says if you do this is what will happen. Anyone, and I'm sure that happens all of the time. How many of us have had fraudulent calls from someone just, oh, yeah, you've won this, you've won. Whoever asked us, how do they get our contact?
Good. I think what this is when I just come back from the US and was walking across this was about 5 years ago, and somebody approached me, hey, how's everything going? Fine. It's like, where have I met this person? Oh yeah, I work at the bank. And I was the one who processed your bank transfer. Now, And I've shared this story with a lot of, not a lot, I mean, but with people who have made me know that this is not unique to my case. Okay, in the sense that, of course, they saw it as something nice. Here I did a good customer service to you and so on and so forth. But imagine the implications, because it's very, very intrusive, okay? And to me, it felt like somebody saying, "Now me process your medical record." God knows, okay, what it implies, okay, for somebody, something so personal, and people just feeling that they could do that, and it's done all the time. People picking a call and asking somebody else, "Well, tell me so and so by almost again on your account." Okay, and I'm sure that it might be the same of people saying, so and so person, that guy they can't pay me, or this so and so person can't pay me. It gets so and so, avoid them. Those things take people to jail, because we're talking about psychological trauma here. Okay, and so, and absent, you know, most of the time it's this. That's what I'm talking about. Ignorance. Again, I want to underline, because I know people misinterpret in ignorance, unaware of the existence of the fact of something. And what I'm saying here is that every law, before implementation or just before close or in tandem with implementation, you'd have this workshop, these trainings, and so, and then people become more and more aware of their rights and responsibilities. So I want to pause there for a second.
I get party now in the bank, and you just call her, how much this person get? If you have put her, you just need relationship, or in the absence of anything, you get cash, you know. But I mean, the implications are grave, they are serious, and anyone, not just of a victim. You know? So thank you so much, Doug, for sharing that. Let's bring in Mr. Thomas more content. You know, most of the time when we talk about data protection, data rights, you know, on the other end of the scale, you know, is public security, public interest, public good, and things like that. To what extent do you think data protection or data rights should be compromised in favor of the public good? You know, I'll give you an example. You know, during COVID, there was this debate about whether the names of those who were COVID positive should be published to protect all of us. There was this raging debate. And then you had data activists like myself saying, that's going to be really nice. So to what extent do you think the public good should override any privacy consideration?
Yeah, I believe that to every law there are exceptions. And even in data protection, there are cases in which exceptions can actually be given for the state to actually pry into the data of persons. But it has to be very, very much strong. I have seen some legislations in other countries that have passed data protection laws that actually create exceptional cases in which the data of a person can actually be taken even without the person's consent. Let's say, for instance, there is somebody in this room who is a terrorist and who will actually pose threats to the lives of every other person in this room. And information which is the security apparatus. It will actually pry into your personal data. It will actually intercept your communication. But that also should be done through lay down processes and procedures. And that is why in the Malabo Convention and the AU Optional Protocol, there is a proposal for not only a data protection law to be established, but to have a data protection agency. Because if we have a data protection law in the absence of a data protection agency, there will still be a lacuna. You cannot rely on NACRA, National Civil Registration Authority, that actually collects data from citizens. to police themselves. It's of course beyond the principles of natural justice. You cannot be a judge in your own case. So in an instance where a National Civil Registration Authority, for instance, goes outside of their remit, there should be an independent institution to actually hold them to account. So similarly, in exceptional cases where there is need for the state to pry into the personal data space of a citizen or of an individual, such a procedure must go through a data protection agency as will be enshrined in laws that will be established in the state. So when we talk about data protection, it's a whole domain that every person should actually be concerned about. Anybody can just wake up in the morning, go to the mobile telecommunications industries, or your girlfriend will just wake up and say, I'm not glad this man, you talk too much on the phone in this year. You go pay one guy when he be an encounter and I tell, say, we like to see me my text messages. We have seen marriages disintegrate. We have seen people die on account of psychological problems. Somebody go to a hospital, they go diagnose of a very serious disease where you don't want anybody to know. By the time you leave the hospital, the information is all over the place. That's your personal data privacy. That is unique to you, and that the hospital should actually protect. You go to the bank, as the professor was saying, you do your transaction, $100 million. By the time you leave, they don't call one they don't call my company. That man doesn't drop $100 million. It's actually not professional, and it's a human rights issue, I must say. It's a serious human rights issue. And that's why I'm very, very much interested in it. But one thing that gives us respite in all of this is that government is committed. We have had a series of engagement. Government has signified interest in having data protection law. We have met with different stakeholders. We have had deliberations. I have a draft copy of the data protection law that has just been passed. We had a meeting about 2 weeks ago on that. And we hope and pray that they will remain true to their commitment, because it's a serious challenge. It's a very serious challenge. I don't see person in examination sleep in a university, you know, Makituma and Makeni Convention. We get 10%. The Makituma, how is that so? What do you mean is not this? It's an issue of data protection. So it's not only the NTL you're talking about, so it goes beyond what we think. So everybody here should be concerned about it. It's a very serious issue. So this has nothing to do with cyber security. Why cyber security? The phone, the machine, this, that. Data protection goes beyond cyber security. That's why we must be very concerned about it. It's very much important.
Sure. Let's bring in Dr. Sylvia. Like you, in addition to all of the other things you do, you're also a qualified medical doctor. I'll take you back to the COVID-19 debate. What were your thoughts on that? Was it right? So let's say a pandemic situation like the COVID, in the interest of the state, will it be right to publish the names of the, because if I don't say this person get COVID, I will avoid that. So we don't save everybody. What do you think about that?
Every single human right in this world, every single human right in this world has a limitation. Everyone, there's none that does not have a limitation. And most of the times, the limitations are done so as to protect other people's own rights. So it is not just your own right that matters. The rights of the community matters. The rights of the neighbors matters. So coming to the COVID crisis, COVID is something we had never, ever, ever heard about. And we were here in Africa. As you rightly say, I'm a trained medical doctor, and I know the limitations of our healthcare system. We didn't know what was coming. What we were seeing, for those of us who have gone to America, there's a place in America called Central Park, in New York, called Central Park. And what we had seen was Central Park, one of the most beautiful and serene places where you can go. It's a wide open park, was transformed into a field hospital. It was that bad in New York. And then we saw in Italy, We saw scenes of coffins, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of coffins, and we saw these scenes. And these were advanced countries with proper medical care. And it was coming to Africa. And we knew with our health limitations that if this one comes here, it's just going to wipe off so many of us. But fortunately, and this is something the world needs to look into, the African DNA, the African genetic makeup has been able to really resist COVID. I don't know what it is. Maybe not the cassava leaf would eat. Yeah. Maybe not the bitters would eat. But there's something there that needs to be investigated about why it didn't affect us as it did. So the call back then by some of us, and I was one of those who was very vehement, that we should name people who die or catch COVID as a means of protecting the wider community. Because everybody has the right to their privacy, but what if your privacy rights impinge on the entire community? If COVID had come in that terrible way that we had been afraid it would come, and we start hiding people inside, the fortunate thing didn't come, and praise God, it didn't come in that wave of, we had assumed it would come in. You have to protect the community. You have to protect people, because you realize that the healthcare system will not be able to sustain what was coming. So the reason why some of us were calling for identification, it was not to name and shame, but because we saw what was happening in Western countries, and we thought other people have rights, including those who would catch COVID.
I beg to differ. I vehemently oppose sharing people's medical status publicly. Yes, no person's rights are absolute. There are constraints, but in this case, for me, this is one of those very rare moments. And I think it's only when somebody knowingly, let's say somebody has COVID, just to give an example, and knowingly goes around, okay, coming up close and personal and spreading with the intent to cause harm. The thing about exposing people's medical rights, medical status, is that it almost never solves the public health crisis issue. In fact, it exacerbates it. It prevents people who might have otherwise wanted to go and seek treatment to go on the ground, because if they know say I get COVID, okay, everybody go run away from me like for say, nah, AIDS I get, and they go kill people them. In fact, that was the thing that happened with HIV/AIDS. And it was only when people started saying, listen, let's destigmatize this disease, that people started openly coming out, okay? And I think for me, you can get a balance, especially when it comes to data. I think that's the core part of it. We don't have to compromise privacy with public health. That's why you have, in medical research, the issue of pseudonymization, wherein you can conduct research, you can take people's all medical condition, and only that those very few people who must know, usually no more than one or two in an industry of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, would know. We pseudonymize the name of that person. We replace it with either with a synonym or some kind of string of letters that mean nothing. And then when we want to de-anonymize, we come back again and do that again. I would beg to differ and differ so because it's very important. I mean, issues, because after COVID, we're going to get something else. Okay? And whenever there's that knee-jerk reaction, because usually this is given by fear, and fear breeds more fear, and then you have this downward spiral. Okay? And to me, and this is where I will conclude, you do not need, again, I reiterate, to compromise, okay, to barter, to exchange, okay, individual privacy rights with public health safety, unless, and this is where I agree with you, Dr. Blyden and Thomas Mokonte, unless and until at the point where clearly that things constitutes, okay, a clear and present danger. Not just danger, it must be clear and it must be present. That's where that person's right becomes abrogated, okay, and subjugated to the rights and safety of the community and public.
Terrorist is here and use that, as a subterfuge to actually invade their privacy. But I mean, it's interesting your thoughts and differing opinion with a learned medical doctor. As we round up, there will be time for Q&A. I'm sure you'll have a lot of questions that you would like these experts to respond to. But as we round up, come on to you. The ongoing legislation data protection law. What's specific issues would you like to see in that law? What specific things?
Well, I believe that there is need for us to have a data protection agency. There is need for us to have a data protection agency that will actually look into issues that may arise as a result of breaches that will come from either state institutions that are responsible for gathering, protecting, or disclosing data. For instance,
enforcement of the law.
No, enforcement of the law cannot be left in the hands of the Ministry of Information or NCI or any other body. But there should be an independent institution established for the purposes of looking into issues that may arise as a result of data protection breaches. Because if we leave it in the hands of NCI, then they will be judged in their own case. There is a high tendency for NCI to actually go out of their limit and violate data protection rights of India. It should be an independent institution to look into the issues that may arise and then have redress mechanisms put in place.
Finally, before I get how consultative, inclusive is the correct?
Yeah, I will say here without hesitation that so far it has been very consultative. I believe that the drafters of this particular data protection law have learned some lessons from the cybersecurity law. You know that the cybersecurity law issue from its incipient stage was flat with a number of anomalies, and the citizens, human rights activists, journalists raised eyebrows about issues of consultation and the content of it. Some aspects of it were, of course, challenged. But with this, every step along the way, we continue to have consultation. In fact, we have had a series of meetings. Actually, data protection is I give it all these 2-3 months, and it's very serious. But it's very exciting to be part of the process. I have learned a lot. Before now, I was moving around with the notion that cybersecurity has settled everything around data. But the more you become involved in the process and you interface with institutions and people who are knowledgeable, like Professor here and Doctor, you continue to enrich your knowledge around data protection. You know that this is something that is very, very much critical and it has cataclysmic effect on the individual and the state if laws are not established to actually protect rights around this particular sphere.
Let's hear from Prof. What would you like to see in the data protection law for Salon?
GDPR, General Data Privacy Regulation, the EU, okay, it's become the benchmark, the standard, the golden rule, whatever, all over the world, okay? And all countries, and by the way, Dr. Bladens mentioned the cookies, and I was following that keenly. And in fact, the reason why wherever you are in the world, I see those cookies is because of GDPR. And in fact, most of those cookies now, if you want to just accept, you want to go one further and say select, you would see that you're now given the opt-in option instead of opt-out, meaning to say you only expose now if you choose to be allowed to be exposed. It used to be you can only not be exposed if you say, hey, stop exposing me. GDPR, the gold standard, and please relay that request for me to the team, okay? The GDPR looks at 7 core principles of data protection, okay? And 8 data privacy rights, okay? And of course, I would stop there. I won't itemize it. But it's very important. The European Union General Data Protection Regulation, 7 principles of data protection and 8 data privacy rights. You can't go wrong. Of course, you have to modify to make sure that we are best fits for variations in ecosystems that vary. We are not, context matter, but by and large, you can't go wrong with that. And it helps with enforcement. It would help with the enforcement. They're not going to leave us high and dry. Small media and the likes. Okay, we'll be talking the same language. Okay.
Well, I'm not an expert in that. I think Professor Umaru has eloquently highlighted, especially the universal issues, which would not vary from country to country. On my way coming here, I sent a message by WhatsApp to the Minister of Information. I was asking him if he could send me any draft of a Data Protection Act that is currently in place, because I knew vaguely that there was something in place. And I was here on the high table when he just sent me, and I have browsed through it just now, and I must say I'm quite impressed. I don't know if this is what Thomas Mokonte and others have been working on, but in this brief moment that I've gone through it just now on the high table here, I seem to be impressed with what is in there. But I want to raise a concern as a former minister, a former government official, that Sierra Leone is a poor country. Our revenue that we generate, the money they make, raising from customs, from fees, charges, license, revenue, is not much. And creating all these commissions and agencies takes a toll on not just the wage bill, even the administrative cost of running these entities. And some of these entities have this tendency to say that they want to be located in every region. So you will hear the right to access information will tell you they want an entity, they want an office in Northwest, in North, in South, in Southeast, they want an office everywhere. So I am seeing now another proposed additional commission, which would be an additional burden on the country's meager resources. So I think consideration should be given to the fact that we are taking away from monies that should be spent, and I say this as a former Minister of Social Welfare, Gender and Children's Affairs. I have seen firsthand where the human capital of this country is suffering because a chunk of the money that should be spent on human resource development is being spent on commissions. So in as much as I love what I see in the Data Protection Act, my concern is the costing, the financial burden in having this entity, this commission, because it says there should be a commission that will be set up in place to monitor. I think we should now weigh the two things. Is there going to be our women, our children, their education, their health is now going to take second place because we have to spend money on creating a brand new commission to take care of the interest of the same human capital that we have now abandoned because we want to create these commissions. So to my mind, the only input I would bring in is the cost implications. All these commissions, all these agencies, and ladies and gentlemen, I want to be president of Sierra Leone one day. Let me land. I promise you something. If I become president of Sierra Leone one day, my priority would be taking money and putting it on the human beings themselves, than on all these commissions and agencies. And because at the end of the day, what's going to happen? Let me tell you what's going to happen. And this is happening in almost all commissions right now. They will tell you we don't have money to operate. We want to operate, but we don't have funds. So you've created these white elephants, and you're spending these billions of leones on the administration and salaries of these white elephants, and the people are suffering. The people that we are now claiming you are protecting their data. So my own thoughts would be, yes, we need a Data Protection Act. Yes, we need a Data Protection Commission. But at what expense? And what priority do we put on it for a country that has such a very low revenue generating base? Thank you.
Yes, it is very quick, I promise. Okay, there's a silver lining to this, okay, which I miss in the old space. Again, I'm coming back to this fourth industrial revolution, which is that it is overlooked the importance to which these acts empower financially, okay, citizens, okay? And I'll wait for questions for that later. But listen, these acts not only empower citizens to make money, it gives government money instead of government spending, okay? Let that percolate, okay, for a minute. And I'll be willing to expand on that if you give me the opportunity to discuss the howness of it.
All right, thank you very much, distinguished panelists. Let's go to our audience now. Let's have time for questions. See about answers. Comments as well.
Hello, Amasa. Thank you very much. I think it's been an interesting conversation. A few things came to mind as you were talking. Firstly, let's talk about law. Like Sylvia said, a lot needs to be done. Practically, I think it's good, but the issue of setting up a new commission for me doesn't make much sense. We've been investing a lot of money on this. So my first question I wanted to ask the minister the NCR boss the last time, why can't we have this law under the I think the Commission for information, like Right to Access Information Commission. We can have this law in it. In other countries, you have a special ombudsman who deals with issues of protection. Because protection issues, it's really dire. Sometimes I had investors talking about the fact that you don't have much investment in the country because some investors want to feel safe, and the data protection law is one avenue they think they'll feel safe and secure coming to invest. And so this is an opportunity we can really have in this country if we have data protection law. Secondly, like Thomas More said, I was not expecting NCRA to be running around with this law because it will be the player and the ref at the same time. I was expecting a different entity, like we had the Right to Access Information Law, we had a coalition that went out on with it. Even when they're talking about the Cybercrime Act, I was expecting us to have the data protection law passed first before we have the Cybercrime Act, because for me it makes little or no sense when you have a Cybercrime Act without a data protection law. It's not only for ordinary citizens, even for Sierra Leoneans. You have birth standard, you go to birth standard every day. You can have a birth certificate now, next week you'll take another one, because where's your data? Is your data secure and safe? You go to the birth standard department, you see your books everywhere. Things are there, your birth certificates, your birth records are there everywhere. So let's see how we can be able to ensure we prioritize this, because it will actually help us in the future. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much.
Hello, everyone. This question goes for the issue concerning the different type of data that we have diversely around the country, because personally, I was happy that Dr. Blyden made mention that the government is not the only body responsible to gather data. Banks, schools, and several other institutions nationwide do gather data. So my question, and I would really want Mr. Moore to be the leader in this particular question, because it goes a lot for what you are planning in terms of data protection. What would be the integration mechanism for all data diversely around the country? Because if you are going to have data protection, then you have to integrate every single data for all institutions into one. So what would be your mechanism to do that? And if you succeed, how would this be regulated so that the data wouldn't be misused by any other body? Thank you.
Hello, good evening. Othaniel Goodin. Yes, data protection law, it's critical. I'm a little bit worried about our infrastructure. A while back, I remember when I think it was Alpha Kanu, the then Minister of Information, we went to the launching of Orange e-data center at Spode. And from his speech, I was made to understand that government is not having its own e-data center, and they were hoping that Orange will store government data into, government will store their data into Orange e-data facility, and which is quite risky. And also we went to the now Zulab, I guess it was Salcab then, and we were made to understand that because we don't have our own like server or data center, whenever you use the internet or your email, it will have to ping all the way to Europe or America first. And then all the information you are having, like you're using on the internet, I mean, it's somewhere in some server in Europe or America, while before coming back, routing back to you, to Sierra Leone. So we don't have this infrastructure in place, this protection, mechanism in place. So I'm wondering how this law can protect us from external attack, because our data is virtually out there to the rest of the world. Thank you.
I'd advise you keep your comments and your questions really short. please.
Hello, good evening once more. This question is for Dr. Blyden. As a politician and a leading female influencer, I'm sure you're prone to cyber attacks on the cyberspace as every other citizen is, but more so you. So how do you handle this, and how would you advise a young promising lady using the cyberspace to handle such attacks?
I think we have another gentleman over there.
Yes, good evening, everybody. I'm Ibrahim. Firstly, I noted that most of the speakers actually leaned on laws protecting data. And I believe in protecting someone's data, there are lots of factors involved. Firstly, the laws will protect. The individual, he himself has to protect himself. And also, for instance, government also has a role in actually helping protect data. You know, as the internet actually provides a means of anonymity, you know, you find it difficult to actually, firstly with a law, you need someone that you can hold accountable, and then the law applies. For instance, someone out there, you know, sharing, there's this lottery thing going on, okay, you go to Canada and things. These are all means of harvesting customer data which is being sold. And then it's done voluntarily by the individuals themselves. And those actually pushing those informations, you know, literally might not be even in the country. So you find out that it's so difficult just with laws, you know. You have to back it up with, citizen awareness, ensuring that people are aware that what they are spreading, you know, it's something which is which actually is detrimental to themselves. They'll be harvesting data. Imagine someone clicks a link, okay, you win lottery to Australia. If there's a form, you fill your form, okay, put your password to this site, and then you put your password. And that password is a legitimate password to some other website. So it's like they're harvesting your data. They'll just check the password, check across Facebook, your credentials, okay, same, okay, same. Basically, we all use the same credentials across board. So with just one instance, someone can get access to every single platform you've got. So that's one thing. Something else again, you know, government has a key role to play in actually helping individuals, its citizens. For in the UK, they have SOC, Security Operations Centers, that monitor all government institutions. They monitor, for instance, they monitor all servers in all ministries. You have, you know, they pool resources, they get specific people, they install software, they buy specific things, they connect all servers, they monitor traffic of all government servers, be it Ministry of Information, everything is put to one place where you have specialized SOC, cybersecurity professional analyzing data. So in an instance, let's say a threat actor, someone from Guinea, because now the war is cyber. Someone from Guinea is trying to like do something, trying to know some critical thing or government. There was a time, I think a Chinese threat group attacked the EU. Yes, yes. So things like that, government has to develop the capacity to actually protect its own citizen via the platform it harvests citizens' data. So these are some of the things which I actually noted in addition to what you said. Thank you.
And I want to believe you have one more from your MC.
Unfortunately, I think that's all. All right, let's hear from that gentleman.
Okay.
Good evening, all. My name is Sonke Tue. My question is a bit political, Dr. Blyden, and it's worth. With regards to this cybercrime law, we know we have people who are investigative journalists like Chernobyl. And when you read the data, the Cybercrime Act, it talks about not accessing file or copying or changing the name of a certain folder. They say it's a crime. So what actually is protecting investigative journalists from when they are doing their job from being prosecuted or being criminalized. Because we need people like Chernobyl and others to expose the dark sides of our politics. That's one. And two, with regard to health, we saw in May 2020 when the former Minister of Education died, Makeni Convention. We had this problem with whether disclosing whether he had COVID or not. And then Chamiru went out and said he died of COVID. And a few days later, the EOC in Tonkolili said he died with no signs of COVID. So we're having a problem of exactly what happened. And we also saw during the early stages of COVID in Sierra Leone, case 3 and 4, everybody out there was asking who were cases 3 and 4. Then Mr. Jagmu said they will not disclose the identity of case 3 and 4. By then, everybody was like, maybe probably somebody related to the presidency or something like that. And really, if we're talking about data protection, right on one end, we have a spokesman disclosing somebody's status of COVID, and the other hand, we have the same spokesman not disclosing the person.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Tui, and all the others. I'm sorry, Mr. Kalon, but I'll have to kick against what you just said about that being the last question. I think as the MC, I am entitled to one question. So I admire the way you have diversified the conversation, but I am the money man, so I want to take it specifically to the financial technology space, the business ecosystem. There is this issue about data protection when it comes to consumer credit history and creditors as well, the banks as well as the debtors. So this information can be used for financial fraud. And as we all know, huge money is at stake, a lot of money, and financial fraud is all over, it is rampant. So the conversation has been diversified. Has the law provided anything for the business people? Can you comment fairly about the law protecting business people, not just about governance and this stuff? We want to hear about the business ecosystem. What do you have to say? A fair comment, please.
All right, Mr. MC, you really had the last word there. But let's go back to our panelists. Dr. Blyden, many of the questions were directed at you. Just like you to respond, provide your concluding remarks as well.
I hope I got the question because you said many of the questions. I don't think I wrote down many questions. I hope I don't miss anybody's question. I think if I have missed any question, let me know. But I believe my brother there, Messiah, was more of a comment. There was no direct question for me. I think my first question, correct, came from the lady who was asking, I see another lady endorsing her head with me. She probably also wants me to answer that aspect. How do you handle cyber attacks? We will take the whole day here for me to explain how do I handle it, because you're quite right. Because of my prominence and because I don't hesitate to express myself, if I have an opinion on something, I express it. And no matter how controversial the opinion is, I will still express it if I think the community needs to know it. And that sparks up a whole circle that can be very disastrous sometimes. And I have trained over the years and developed a lot of resilience in handling these things. And what I think I can do for you today, I'll give you my direct phone number. The ladies here who want the direct phone number, you can send me a WhatsApp, because there's no way I can effectively reply to you tonight in 5-10 minutes. It's not possible. But if I give you my private WhatsApp number now, you can send me a WhatsApp and I will take my time and we'll engage and I can explain to you how, for different situations, I've been able to handle different scenarios. But I can give, first of all, my number is Sierra Leone 030 999 000. This is my direct private number. Don't call, send a WhatsApp. If you call, it's always on silent, I don't pick it up. But if you send a WhatsApp, within 1 hour, you will get a reply because I'm always checking my WhatsApp. So 030 999 000. Send me a message and I will be able to engage back and forth and give you much better advice. The other young lady there who also wants to know, so send me a message. And then the other young lady here who wants to know. And if there's, you should have allowed me to learn. And if there's any gentleman also, because the cyber attacks can be gender specific. For example, if you are out there as a woman saying what some other entity doesn't want you to say, the most instant way to put you down is to call you prostitute. You've slept, oh, left eye, I don't sleep with so man. So at the end of the day, it demoralizes you, they deliberately try to demoralize you. But that will not happen for a man. So there's the gender specific attack, and how do you handle such gender specific attack? We'll engage on that by PV, and I would show you some of the tactics that I use to effectively manage it. How do you build the resilience? One of the ways is you send back at the person's mother. It's very, very effective. Trust me. It's very, very effective. And the way you do it in a way where you do not insult the mother. You don't insult the mother. So they say to you, oh, you're a prostitute, that's why you're writing this. You know, so you don't go back at the person and say your mother is a rarity. What you say is, and it is unfortunate that your mother was not able to tell you that when you are in public, you should not call a woman a prostitute, because it means that your mother was a prostitute. So that way, it plays on the person's conscience. And sometimes when you reach into the person's inbox, into the person's PV, and you say to the person, what you just wrote is an embarrassment to your mother. Imagine if your mother reads this, what your mother would, it works. So you don't insult the mother. But we'll engage on this by PV. Now, the second question I believe was for me, was speaking about, I hope I got it, the COVID issue. I believe that's the, okay, what protects Chernobyl from? I think we'll just go back to what I said earlier. If they want you, they will get you. If the government wants you as an investigative journalist, they will get you. If it is not stolen property, it is Panadol. They will find something. So I don't think having these laws is going to, passing this act is going to be an intimidation or intimidate. If they want, listen, if they want Chernobyl, maybe you will say if it comes to Sierra Leone, they might now hold him and say that you are arrested for breaching the data cyberspace law, and that would be the fear, not so? But they could also arrest him for not putting on a seatbelt. Yes, he could be coming from the airport, and the vehicle that picks him up from the airport, he's sitting in the vehicle and he doesn't have his seatbelt on. And they can arrest him. That's a traffic offense. They can arrest him, and the minute they arrest him, they have the right to hold him for a minimum of 72 hours. And during that 72 hours period, they could have someone come up with an allegation that Cherno had killed somebody 3 years before. And so they would detain Cherno for up to 10 days. So don't be afraid of any law. If the government wants you, they will get you. Now, The issue of
COVID.
COVID. I remember when the said gentleman, my former colleague in cabinet, when he died, I was in detention at the CID. And some people, again, my case, they wanted me. So they just say, go pick away, we can search inventing for charger with. So, yeah, so at the end of the day, so they will always find something. So don't be afraid of any law. If they want, they will charge you. And they charged me and they actually took the photograph to court as evidence. Yes. Now, the point is, I'm just letting you know, don't be afraid of any law. Now, as I was saying, I was in detention at the CID. And the member of parliament came to visit me at the CID. And he said to me, Minkailuba in Belgium, we just don't commodate. And he was describing the crowd. And I said, say this COVID day, una go get a boku and so. He said, oh, not a COVID killer. I said, okay, what's in killer? And then he describes to me what happened and the circumstances under which he passed away. Now, I am a trained medical doctor. And I whether you like it or not, I don't practice, but I'm one of the most brilliant in my class because I have an analytical brain. And the minute the guy told me the circumstances under which he passed away and the manner in which he passed away, I said to him at the CID in front of everybody, I said, he died of COVID. He said, no. I said, he died of COVID. What you've just explained to me, with the diabetes and this and this and this and this. I said, this is COVID. When later on it was announced that it was COVID, the first thing that flashed through my mind was I was told the huge crowd that went to the funeral. And I said to myself, if this government is responsible, they have to put out that this man died of COVID so as to alert everybody in that crowd that there's a possibility you might have been exposed to COVID. So there are circumstances under which you as a government have to let people know. Because as I said, I was in detention. I didn't go to the funeral. I would have gone if I was not in detention. But the crowd, they told me, turned up. It's a crowd that any responsible government should have announced immediately that there is a possibility you've been exposed to COVID-19 by this crowd. Now, going to case 3 and case 4. I know who was case 3, I know who was case 4, and I always knew who they were. No, I can't because it's not. One of them actually is a friend of mine. So I knew who was case 3, I knew who was case 4. I never repeated it, I never stated it, who they were, because there was no reason to state who they were. Now there are circumstances under which you have to state, and I think that was the circumstance for my late former colleague. The huge crowd that turned up, people had to know that you might have been exposed to COVID-19. And the last question, the last question now is the issue of business ecosystems. Now, I am many things, and one of the things I'm the chief executive officer of my companies. And one of these days, this fellow you were speaking about, he announced on his program, he said, Dr. Blighter will not take your account $20,000 if not the day. You don't want that. You want to feel protected, and you want anybody who, because if somebody is to do business with me now, and the person I want to do a business that is maybe $200,000 business, and the person hears that $20,000 if he not get, the person will not want to do business with me because it's a risk. So whosoever is at that bank who might have given out such information, whether true or not, I would want that person punished. So definitely to protect the business and financial ecosystems, Mr. MC, I think a special deterrent, very strong and harsh deterrent for the investment climate in Sierra Leone has to be put into such.
Thank you so much, Doc.
Okay.
Just 15, 20 seconds.
We will discuss that. Send me a PV in my WhatsApp so my other colleagues can have it. Just send me a PV and we'll take it from there.
Yeah, 1 second, the right to access information mandate as a public figure that all public figures disclose their assets. That's the law. Yeah, but the other things, I don't need to respond to all of them. Just very briefly, the thing about anonymity, just because you use a different name, okay, doesn't mean you're anonymous. Even when you go to the dark web, you could be discovered and unmasked. Okay, so for those of you who are using Google, thinking if you use a search incognito, that gives you all that privacy and protection, it doesn't, okay? It's like a smoke screen, two-way mirror, okay? Just so you know, the issue about the SOP in the UK, that speaks to effective cyber security and monitoring and surveillance that goes on in the UK for protection for 1,000,001 reasons. But I do want to respond very quickly to the issue of consumer protection and the credit history. There's a law, okay, the Credit Reference Act, and really those speaks to different types of data, okay, and I won't go into that. Please just Google and do your research on, or ask me on the 3 types of data, and these are very important even when you craft law and draft them. Open data, closed data, shared data. Closed data, by and large, data that the government says, this is national security, you should not know how many weapons, how many, military weapons, grade weapons we have, and so on and so forth. Shared data, financial credit, your doctor can, under certain circumstances, share your medical history for obvious and obvious and understandable reasons, but cannot share it publicly. So it's not open, it's shared. Same for financial records and so on and so forth. Open data, public in the open, okay? Public in the open, shared under any and all circumstances. I think I do want to stop at that. And you ask us to close. Thank you all very much. That would be my closing.
Yeah, thank you very much. Let me start with the gentleman who was out there. National Civil Registration is not the only institution pushing the personal data protection legislation. In fact, it is Ministry of Information that is leading it. We have the Ministry of Information, we have NACA, we have the Ministry of Internal Affairs. So we have cross-sectorial approach to it. And he was talking about the need to establish a personal data agency, not necessary. I will tell you that the Right to Access Information Commission is already overwhelmed with work that they have not been able to even fold out their mandate. They have a lot of challenges. Whilst I agree with Doc that the country is constrained economically and establishing institutions will heap burden on the economy of the country, but that should not erase the fact that there is need for an independent authority to look into issues that may arise on account of personal data. This is something that has been established in other countries where we have data laws, and there are legislations to which Sierra Leone is a signatory, like the Makeni Convention, the AU Optional Protocol, the EU, and all of you have espoused the need for a personal data protection agency because it is very much essential. You cannot fuse personal data protection agency the work of Personal Data Protection Agency with the work of right to access information. Right to access information is a whole domain. I will say we'll speak on here, it will be a whole day issue. So they have nothing to be able to do one, not even for even half. Somebody was talking about having an integrated approach to data. Somebody was asking a question around there, it was directed to me. I believe that there is an agency established for gathering personal data, which is NACRA. And huge resources have been actually directed to that particular institution. Millions of dollars. As we speak, they have a huge database and they have a server, which even the EU is sponsoring or is about to sponsor them to expand. So, and that is why you see them even making attempts to now start letting out, be the institution that will be giving information to institutions like NEC. If you want information for anything, you can approach them. They are even trying to venture into the Registrar General's office to have some functions, some information directed to them. So that is very much important. And you were asking a question about one person saying this at the same time, at the other time. That is why we need data protection law to guide all of these issues. Wherein an information minister will not come and say, this man has COVID-19, and then you have somebody else from NACOVAC refusing to disclose the information of another. But when we have a law, it makes information flow to be very consistent. It makes it predictable, and that somebody can take action in an instance where you feel your rights has been violated or personal information about you has been let out that is not supposed to be let out. So there is need for a data protection law. These issues are very much extensive. We seem to speak of them. We spend the entire day or even a week. But I'm very happy and grateful to be part of this discussion. I have learned a lot, I must say, in the process. I have learned a lot, and I hope to continue having similar opportunities to engage young people. And I want to thank Choosing Generation profusely for continuously providing the platform for young people to be enriched. Well, 2 weeks ago we were in Makeni, and it was very marvelous. This is great. I must congratulate you.
That's all we have time for this particular panel discussion. I would like to offer my immense thanks and appreciation to Mr. Thomas Mokonte for sharing your thoughts, your ideas, and insight on the subject. Professor Ba, we thank you immensely for your contributions to this discourse. And of course, Dr. Sylvia Blyden, thank you. Thank you so much. I will give them a round of applause.
Thank you very much. I now have my mic back to continue with my task. So we're not going to waste much time. We are going to the next item on our agenda, which is the introduction of a keynote speaker. Ladies and gentlemen, rest assured that after the keynote speaker has addressed us, we'll have a wonderful and a lovely coffee break. So before wasting much time, I'd like to call on Linda Bull to introduce to us our keynote speaker. Clap for Linda Bull, please.
Thank you, Cecil. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It is a privilege and honor for me to stand here to introduce our keynote speaker for this august event. Our keynote speaker is a proud son of King Tom, and that is deliberate. He attended the St. Edward's Secondary School, King Tom, and subsequently went to Fabi College, where he attains his prestigious degree. Being an ardent Christian, he joined the Bible Study Union, where he played an integral part and also composed the BSU theme song, We Are Compelled by Love. Following that, He later emerged as president of the Fabi College Students' Union government, a position he used to push forth the welfare of his fellow students. After his bar finals, he became an astute barrister and solicitor of the High Court of Sierra Leone. In 2019, he was appointed as the Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs and Internal Cooperation, an office which he used to contribute to nation building. In 2021, he was also appointed as the Deputy Minister of Information and Communication, an office which he currently occupies. He doubles as the official spokesperson of the National Coronavirus Emergency Response Center, NACOVAC, and his pivotal role played will never go unmatched. I will crave his indulgence to pardon me if I leave out any important detail that has to do with his passing. My MC, eminent panelists, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome our keynote speaker, the Deputy Minister of Information and Communication, Solomon Jamiru Esquire.
A round of applause for the person who introduced me. So let me take this out for a moment. Let me benefit from the luxury of space, Dr. Blyden. Let me indicate how privileged I am to be here, and I also benefited tremendously from the expert views and analysis from this distinguished panel. Indeed, you are gentlemen and women of stature, and I ask all of us to appreciate them one more time. So my boss, Minister Mohamed Suarez, was scheduled to make the keynote address today, but he's otherwise engaged. He had to dash to Kano, where there will be a very important function over the weekend. And I am honored to have the trust of Minister Suarez to present the keynote at this very important occasion, and all of us consider ourselves to indeed be the chosen generation. So I have titled this an open, connected, and regulated communications ecosystem, and I'll go straight to the piece. A lot is evolving in the communication space in Sierra Leone, and as a ministry, we appreciate the courtesy accorded us to lend government's perspective to the discourse. This address will therefore speak to the high-impact public policy interventions which our ministry, together with development and civil society partners, continue to midwife. Government is not only committed to digital transformation and getting our society open and connected, but equally interested in digital regulatory frameworks that are reasonably justifiable in a democratic society. And as we know, the Facebook CEO, Mark Zuckerberg, in February 2020, had called on governments all over the world to provide guidelines and regulation to help tackle the growing problem of harmful online content. The right to free speech gained its first constitutional recognition in Sierra Leone exactly 79 years after the US Supreme Court started giving it some attention. Following the passing in 1917 of the Espionage Act, the US Supreme Court declared in 1919 that, in quote, Congress shall make no law abridging the freedom of speech or of the press. Consistent, therefore, with Section 25 of the Constitution of Sierra Leone, Act No. 6 of 1991, which guarantees protection of freedom of expression and the press, President Julius Maada Bio met with the SLAG executive on 21st May 2018, reiterating his manifesto promise to decriminalize free speech. And on October 28, 2020, His Excellency's assent to the amended 1965 Public Order Act marked the complete removal of the 55-year-old sword of Damocles. Government is equally committed to our interaction in the cyberspace and the protection of personal data rights. As we are all aware, the world has come a long way in the evolution of privacy rights. From the US lawyers Samuel D. Warren and Louis Brandeis, who in 1890 defined privacy as the right to be left alone, to 58 years later, when the UDHR adopted the right to privacy as the 12th fundamental right, to 1967, when the US enacted the Freedom of Information Act, which gave everyone the right to request from state agencies access to documents, to 1981, when the Council of Europe made the right to privacy a legal imperative, and so on and so forth. So data protection and cybersecurity, ladies and gentlemen, are at the heart of public policy. The Journal of Cyber Policy, a Chatham House publication in Volume 4 of 2019, identified cybersecurity as a priority for leaders. It noted how cyber attacks and data breaches can devastate businesses, for example, causing approximately $600 billion financial losses in 2017, and suggesting that cyber risk often results from poor governance. So it is extremely important that we try to manage it from top down. Like many other countries in Africa, Sierra Leone's interest in increased digital governance was actually triggered by the 2014 Malabo Convention on Cybersecurity and Personal Data Protection, which called for a homogeneous data protection framework for Africa, and shortly afterwards, as Professor has mentioned, the 2016 General Data Protection Regulation of the European Union. So Sierra Leone witnessed how African countries such as Kenya, Nigeria, Togo, and Uganda adopted data protection policies in 2019, followed by Rwanda and Egypt in 2020, and South Africa also enacted the Protection of Personal Information Act in 2020. I have deliberately set out the above to establish some broad principles and precepts underpinning Sierra Leone's steps towards governance of the digital space and ensuring that our rights online are as important as they are offline. And so His Excellency President Julius Maada Bio took an oath to faithfully uphold and defend the Constitution of Sierra Leone. And our privacy right is one of those which is guaranteed in Section 22 of the 1991 Constitution, ensuring that no person, unless with his consent, is subjected to the search of his person or his property, or the entry by others on his premises, or interference with his correspondence, telephone conversation, and telegraphic and electronic communications. I am pleased, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, to inform that following Cabinet approval for drafting and enactment of a data protection law, the Ministry is currently working with NCRA, as my friend and brother Thomas Moore has said, to have extensive consultations and validation of the draft. The legislation will bear the relevant hallmarks of a personal data protection instrument and quite aligned with our civil liberties. It will ensure lawful, fair, and transparent processing of our data, accuracy of data, and collection of data for clearly defined and legitimate purposes, storage of data no longer than the period necessary, as well as guaranteeing the security, integrity, and confidentiality of our personal data. So Sierra Leone's policy and regulatory environment for personal data collection, processing, transmission, storage, and use will derive in part and substantial part from very instructive international and regional frameworks, including the AU Convention on Cybersecurity and Personal Data Protection adopted in Malabo in 2014, the ECOWAS Supplementary Act on Personal Data Protection of 2010, and the EU General Data Protection Regulation. And I'm sure this gives additional comfort to Professor because you observed. Yesterday, His Excellency President Bio signed into law the Cybersecurity and Crime Bill 2021. This act provides legal safeguards for cyber crimes. It criminalizes over 20 offenses, including illegal access and interceptions, child pornography, cyber harassment, and the act enables the use of electronic evidence. The data protection provisions in this law are also comforting to note. In Section 10, for example, of the Act, search and seizure of stored computer data by a police officer or any authorized person in the course of an investigation will only be possible upon an application made to a judge of the High Court, canvassing reasonable grounds and a warrant issued for that purpose. It is in a similar token, ladies and gentlemen, that a service provider, let's say a mobile network operator or internet service provider, cannot be compelled to submit any information in its possession or control relating to a subscriber, unless by warrant under the hand of a High Court judge pursuant to Section 12 of the Act. And in producing such requested data, the Act guarantees the privacy of other users, customers, and third parties, and protects the disclosure of data belonging to any person that is not a party to the investigation. The Act also sets a very high bar for collection of real-time traffic data under Section 14 and interception of content data under the Act as well. Also, Section 37(1)(c) of the Telecommunications Act of 2006 provides for the privacy of communication as one of the rights and privileges of customers of communication services. Section 40 of the National Civil Registration Act of 2016 also protects our data from unauthorized access, loss, and destruction. Privacy of information is further guaranteed in part under Sections 19, 20, and 21 of the Right to Access Information Act 2013, and the accompanying regulations, when sanctioned by Parliament, will provide additional mechanisms. The examples cited are consistent with our fundamental rights to privacy enshrined in Section 22 of the Constitution. But on the broader spectrum, Sierra Leone will soon finalize its national digital transformation policy and strategy with support from Digital Impact Alliance in partnership with Smart Africa. And with a $50 million support from the World Bank, will implement the strategy to ensure tangible interventions in some critical areas. The policy entails the establishment of a national digital transformation agency, which will serve as the main coordination and implementation agency for national ICT development initiatives, including e-governance, cybersecurity, and data protection. I am pleased to note that government has approved and adopted some of the legislations that are key to digital economy, including the Cybersecurity and Crime Act. Let me also mention that the Electronic Communications Bill, which when enacted, will repeal and replace the Telecommunications Act of 2006, will also be an added value. This law will in the coming days be gazetted and heard to Parliament for enactment. But all of these commendable steps, ladies and gentlemen, will be meaningless in the absence of digital skills. The recent Sierra Leone Digital Economy Country Diagnostic conducted by the World Bank revealed digital skills challenges in the country. Most of the schools are lacking digital connectivity, compounded by limited power supply in rural areas. Basic digital skills acquisition is therefore impeded by the overall lack of digital connectivity. And so broadening the digital space is therefore intrinsically linked to digital skills development and maturity in Sierra Leone. The ministry will therefore work with the World Bank to develop a national baseline assessment framework for digital skills, which will inform Sierra Leone's digital skills agenda. So let me reiterate that government remains fully committed, not just to addressing gaps in privacy rights, but as half the world remains offline, we aspire to creating an inclusive digital ecosystem, and in that regard would prioritize the following. 1, digital infrastructure to enable our people and businesses connect online with services here and across the world. 2, make information accessible through digital channels like mobile handsets, computers, and internet, and enhance the citizens' government interface more so in exercising the right to access information. And finally, pursue digital literacy and other skill sets so that our people become digitally savvy and an important part of the fourth revolution. With this, I wish to thank you, and I want to express sincere thanks and appreciation to Choosing Generation and to our distinguished panelists. And I also wish to recognize the presence of my friend and brother, Honorable Abdul Kabu. God bless you. Thank you very much, Mr. Solomon Jamiu, our esteemed keynote speaker. Ladies and gentlemen, we want to wrap up the program. We are coming to the end of our event. I'll now call on to the Jack Viewing for the vote of thanks. Put your hands together for TC Jack Viewing, please.
Good evening, everyone. Smile. Good evening, everyone. Thank you. You're making someone nervous. I want to say today's. No, yeah, exactly. I even thought you just put your hands together for me. Can you please? Thank you. That's it. Today's event has been a success, and we're truly thankful to everyone who has volunteered their time to be here this evening. It's really amazing to hear the thoughts and honest opinions, ideas from everyone on data privacy and protection laws. We're grateful to Small Media for partnering with us, CGSL, Sierra Leone. We thank you and we look forward to many more partnerships. To our keynote speaker, Mr. Honorable SQ Solomon Jamiu, that was apt. We thank you for always honoring our call in short notices and in long notices. Thank you very much for your service. To our panelists, I want to say you're fired and we have learned. To be very honest, I was sitting back there and then when it came to the cookie part, I was like, okay, because I was on my phone and then I heard Dr. Siva Bladden spoke about the cooking part, and then she mentioned some other parts, and I was like, oh really? Because I'm a very curious person, and sometimes I go to so many apps, and then I just accept the cookies. But I'm very grateful that now I'll be very, very much cautious when I do them. Mr. Thomas Moore, CGSL is grateful. You're just one call away. Thank you for honoring our invitation. Professor Omar Uba, I like the way you talk. You're just picky, you're very thank you very much. We have learned a lot. To you and everyone here present this evening, we want to say thank you very much. To our CGSL board member, especially to Mr. Soiba Dafe, you're always present in our midst. Thank you very, 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 very much. Honorable Abdul Kago, we're grateful for you to grace our presence this evening. Thank you, everyone. Shalom, and have a good evening. Bye.
Thank you very much, Ms. Tracy Jack-Dury. Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, we have now come to the end of our program, to the end of this wonderful event. Thank you all once more for joining this conversation. I'll now call on Mr. Abdul Sila for closing courtesies. I heard the panelists say they like me. Please put your hands together for me. Put your hands together for Cecil Charles Thompson. I have been your host today. It has been a pleasure being your MC. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. I want to join every CGSL member to thank our beautiful panelists. You've done something awesome. Doc, I must admit it, I learned something new as well from you and Mr. Thomas Moore. It's always been a pleasure. My task here is to, first of all, inform you that after this, I call it interesting and lengthy discussion, we've got something just by the door. We've got you take small snacks and get tea plates. And as well, network. Professor Ba said it a couple of times that in this our generation, we are going to be the digital generation. And if it's going to start here, I encourage you to network as much as possible. Discuss things you've learned, and as well see how you can Google enough to be, even if not on top of the game, but to be at par with current development. So let's go out and have nice tea break, and as well make sure you meet new people and discuss what you learned here today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So, out of professional courtesy at the Trinity Generation Sierra Leone, we would like our members to go last for the coffee break while other guests go first. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. A wonderful evening. Wonderful evening.
Congratulations. Nice program. Congratulations. Thank you, sir. Thank you for gracing
You know, they ever see pictures for see. Could I get an app?
Hey, Papa, that's us. Mr. Man, I see snippet of una program. Lola still hold the argument. I don't like. I think you guys did well with it. I mean, you guys did well with it. I mean, like, una try for expand. I know it's still happening. And all man. Then what we ask? Are not people. So, how do you? How is it? Well, una nice invitation to be this year. Get in touch with all so, one thing that I think that before that, they get contacted before that. No, nobody no mention. If any letter we can send another. But this time I cannot send that letter. No, I don't want to go there. No, like this time around, we got the type of official letter. Like, can I just in touch with you and get to